Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. We're thrilled to welcome you to our webinar today. My name is Bhumika Kona, and I'll be your host today. Should you have any technical issues during the presentation, please feel free to reach out to me via the chat function, which is located in the right-hand panel. We also have a Q&A scheduled for a portion of today's program. Please be sure to enter your questions for the presenters in the Q&A tab, which is also located in the right-hand side panel. We'll address these questions live at the end of the presentation. I'd like to introduce you to our first presenter today for Topple Your Competition with Connected Field Service, Melissa Morgan, Director of Product Marketing. Melissa, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much, Bhumika, and thanks everybody for taking time out of your hectic schedules to join us for our webinar today, Topple Your Competition with Connected Field Service. So we're going to dive into some interesting topics today, and I'm actually joined by one of my colleagues, Thurman Keene, who is Director of our Strategic Alliances team here at ServiceMax, and he's going to walk us through a demonstration at the end of today's presentation. Let's go ahead and get started with our talk today. Just a quick walk through the agenda. We're going to start by talking a little bit around some of the trends for smart connected products and a little bit of background on IoT for those of you who may not be as familiar. Then I'm going to jump into how connected field service works and what it is. And then we'll cover 5 ways to compete and win with connected field service, really focusing on how you can differentiate your organization, and cover a little bit around product service systems and how you can differentiate your business using new business models and focusing on outcome-based service specifically. And then Thurman's going to wrap up our talk today with a demonstration of our connected field service solution. Let's jump in and get started. So I wanted to just introduce ServiceMax because I realize not all of you may be intimately familiar with our company. ServiceMax is the proven leader in field service management, and we work with hundreds of companies like GE and Philips who rely on our technology to transform service to become more proactive and profitable. And we really work with companies of all sizes and across many different industries to help them empower their technicians, their field service technicians, to deliver flawless field service. And we really believe that that ServiceMax can help businesses unleash the untapped growth potential of service, which is part of our core mission and who we are as a company. And so as part of this, what we've always done at ServiceMax is had an intense focus on products. And by products, I mean our customers' products. And so since we've really started, products have always been at the center of the value prop we deliver. ServiceMax is really involved when you're installing, maintaining, or repairing products, and when you're dispatching a technician to service a product as well, from checking a warranty and entitlement information associated with that product, and even when you're keeping track of competitor products. And so really at the core of this is gaining increased visibility into your product, your install base, maximizing the service potential of those installed products, and also looking towards the future and some trends that we'll be talking about to figure out how you can gain a competitive advantage, deliver more proactive service, and ultimately move towards differentiating on service, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. And so as field service is evolving, ServiceMax has really looked at some of the trends that are happening in the marketplace and figuring out where innovation lies in this new service economy. And so you can see there are a number of different trends from things like big data and IoT that many of us have heard a lot about, to even things like millennials and the aging workforce, right? So as our technicians are getting older and our service changes as millennials enter into the workforce, and they're expecting a different level of technology to be able to do their jobs. They're used to engaging in a collaborative and social way, and so what does that mean for businesses today? Other business drivers that we look at when we think about the new service economy and the future of service are things like servicing everything and service as the product, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think most important under business drivers is increasingly powerful customers. And creating loyal customers is something that is more difficult to do today than it was in the past because customers hold a lot of power and they have very high expectations of us. And then also technology trends, so things like mobile and wearables, to 3D printing, and even drones. So figuring out how are we going to leverage these different technology trends that are coming to market. And today we're really going to be specifically focused on talking about IoT and also some mobile capabilities that our technology delivers to help you transition into this new service economy. But before we do that, I really want to start by talking a little bit about reactive service and the shift to proactive service. And the truth of the matter is reactive service is going to move to obsolescence, and we really need to look at the impact of that. When customers are required to report issues, first, the results are dissatisfaction, downtime, and lost productivity. So really a large impact to your customer if they have to take their equipment offline to get it serviced. Then their customers may become dissatisfied with them, and that really creates a ripple effect of whether your customers are going to purchase from you again, purchase more from you, and their ultimate loyalty with your business. But the truth of the matter is that every time you dispatch a technician and have a truck roll, there's a true cost to your business to deliver that reactive service. And we often talk about this as the break-fix model. And it's expensive, right? So you can see here from some data I got from the Service Council, anywhere from $250 to $2,000 for a truck roll, depending on the type of service organization you have, whether it's kind of a typical field service business all the way up to a utility and gas provider that has a more expensive cost to dispatch an engineer to do the work that needs to be done. And then finally, without real insight into the nature of the problem being resolved, you run the risk of requiring multiple visits to get the right parts or right expertise to resolve that issue. And that really results in decreased first-time fix rates and higher mean time to repair. And so really looking at all of the challenges that face us when we deliver reactive service, this concept of proactive service, which I think a lot of us have already explored in different ways, shapes, and forms, whether it's preventive maintenance or starting to analyze data that we have on hand to figure out when and how we can maintain and repair our equipment more effectively, becomes much smarter as technology and other big trends come into play, like the Internet of Things. And so let's talk a little bit about some of these trends in smart connected products. And so smart connected products, as published by Michael Porter, one of the leading economists at Harvard, and also somebody who's published a lot about competition in the past, was actually published an article with Jim Heppelman, who's the CEO of PTC. And in Harvard Business Review, they actually put out 2 articles around what they term smart connected products, which is really their definition of IoT, and talking about how it's really going to give rise to the next era of IT-driven productivity growth at a time when the impact of earlier waves of IT has largely played itself out. And so when you think about the Internet of Things and smart connected products, it's really making machines intelligent, right? So it's embedding sensors into your equipment so that those machines can start to interact with you, share data about their performance, tell you when they're sick, and all of that machine data then becomes part of your workflow and your business process so that you can then look at how to improve different operations, do things more efficiently, and leverage data in a way to really drive more intelligent business offerings and operations. This really has a lot of impact for manufacturing. And in fact, Gartner forecasts that manufacturing will be the #1 industry sector by share to have the global economic value add of the Internet of Things. And it's a huge economic impact. When we look at it, the numbers, McKinsey even estimates up to $11 trillion by 2025 could really come to bear from all of the different initiatives that are happening around IoT. So if you look at consumer applications from things like Nest to even some of the interesting, like you lost your keys and now your keys can tell you where they are, security systems, all the way up to the industrial internet and all of the industrial applications that are going to come out of this. But a lot of that really starts with manufacturers because they're the ones who hold the keys to the products. And so talking to you today from a field service perspective, we're really excited because field service is one of the top use cases for the Internet of Things. Internet of Things is really interesting when you talk about it in theory, but in application, when you start to tie that to how you're going to deliver service more intelligently, there's real impact to come. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. And we're really excited about the Internet of Things and smart connected products, and we've partnered with PTC, who's the leader in IoT solutions today, to really help deliver this solution. And it's a strategic partnership from our perspective that makes a lot of sense because PTC has so much depth and background with manufacturing and products. And when you pair ServiceMax, which is the leading field service management solution, with this, it just makes a lot of sense. And so we're really excited today to talk a little bit about our first-generation solution for connected field service. And it really starts with an operating system of the new service economy. And so in the center here, you can see Our 4 Ps that we like to talk about when we talk about ServiceMax are basically looking at how we transform our customers' core assets, their people, so your technicians, how you're going to enable your dispatchers to schedule them more effectively with the right parts at the right time, being able to really equip your people with the mobile applications that they need to work in an offline setting and follow the workflows that make them as effective and as efficient in the field as possible, also able to capture revenue opportunities when they're out in the field, setting up the processes. And so we have something called Service Flow, which is a really unique business process manager tool that allows you to configure the ServiceMax application to meet your exact business needs. So if you know from a business perspective that you need to, say, drive a 10% increase in revenue, you can look at creating new workflows in ServiceMax to help you accomplish that goal, and it's all very easily configurable. You know, when you think about business processes, some of the other things that you may think about are how the technician is out in the field really following those steps and making sure it's very easy to set up and configure on any mobile device that they may need to have and use. And then promises, so capturing things like SLAs, contracts, preventive maintenance agreements, and warranties, and being able to manage those effectively, and automating entitlements so that when the technician is out in the field, he knows exactly what's covered and can get pricing on any of the information that that customer may have for that particular service project right there on the fly. And then obviously the core of what we're talking about today is products. And so I mentioned a little bit about how ServiceMax helps with products, managing your install base, gaining visibility into those installed products, warranties off of those products. And now as you start to embed sensors in your installed products, which by the way, 40% of manufacturers in a study that Tata Consulting did last year said that they already are embedding sensors into their installed products. And so there's a lot of upside as you start to connect your installed base to think about how you can leverage that information in different ways, and service is obviously one of the most exciting ones. And so we're really excited about our offering for the Internet of Things and how it will eventually move us from reactive to proactive service and ultimately predictive service. And we'll talk a little bit about outcome-based business models towards the end of today's talk. So before we move on, I wanted to just give you a few quick stats to kind of noodle on. We did a study with PTC and Field Service News just a few months ago that really surveyed over 100 professionals in the field service industry to ask them kind of what their thoughts are on IoT and where they are. And we found that 82% of these field service leaders think that early adopters of IoT will gain a competitive advantage, and we're going to focus in on this today. But only 15% of field service companies already had IoT-based systems in place, so it really is still in early days for IoT and service. And so you do have the opportunity to kind of think about this from a strategic point of view and gain the competitive advantage. And then over half of field service companies are either implementing or planning an IoT-based strategy. So while it's early days, you can't wait too long because your competitors are already out there thinking about this, with over half of companies already evaluating IoT. And so let's talk a little bit today about what you can do and what ServiceMax has delivered in our last release as the first solution to seamlessly combine IoT machine data with the system. And Bhumika, we're getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if you're able to mute whoever's making some noise on the line. That'd be great.
Yeah, keep going. I'll go ahead and check to see where it's coming from.
Thank you. So wanted to dive into our solution, Connected Field Service, and as I mentioned, it's really the first complete solution for IoT and field service, and we're really excited about this. There's a number of things you're going to be able to do with Connected Field Service that Thurman's going to show you in the demo later. But just to summarize, you're going to be able to do things like, and once your machines are embedded and set up with smart devices, you can create automated service requests that come into ServiceMax that you can look at in a queue or have even automatically create a work order right in the system. View embedded mashups of machine data, which we'll talk more about. Have a mobile view of that connected device data with our new app, ServiceMax Product IQ, that we'll show you and talk a little bit about today. And then also get some more information around connected diagnostics and repair procedures. So as your machine starts to tell you it's sick, you're also going to be able to learn specifically what might be wrong with it based on the diagnostics that ServiceMax and PTC solution can share with you, and also some contextual repair procedures so that the tech can go out and actually know how to fix that particular issue that the machine has told it about. And then last but not least, remote access, file transfers, and software management. So how can we avoid the costs of truck rolls and start to fix things in a more remote way, and also move towards preventive maintenance models where we're able to even go in remotely and start to perform maintenance on these different pieces of equipment. So let's dive into some of these capabilities in a little bit more detail. So before we do, I want to talk a little bit about how connected field service works. So as I mentioned, this is a partnership between ServiceMax and PTC, and it's really a productized integration between our two systems. So PTC offers the ThingWorx platform, which is the leading IoT platform available on the market, and ServiceMax, as I mentioned before, is all about field service management. And so when you create a productized integration between these two systems, all of a sudden, you're going to be able to quickly understand when one of your machines has an issue or it's sick, get an alert from that particular machine, and then with ThingWorx and ServiceMax, you can start to see a service request come into the system, get some diagnostic information and mashups of machine data right there, and even create a work order right in ServiceMax. From there, you can decide whether you need to dispatch a technician or even provide remote service, and then provide that particular person with the appropriate diagnostic, troubleshooting, and all of the information they need to be able to repair that equipment the first time and as quickly as possible. So what are some of the benefits of connected field service? Really at the heart of this particular offering is about creating fiercely loyal customers that are going to help drive up your customer satisfaction scores and ultimately drive repurchase, retention, and referrals for your business. And so if you look at the idea of delivering service in a way that you fix something before the customer even knows it was wrong and move towards this concept of zero downtime, think about what that means from the customer's perspective. You're just going to absolutely wow and delight them. And when you totally make a sea change in how you're delivering service and the business models that you're delivering to your customers, it's going to create a different level of satisfaction and delight, and associate that with your brand in a way that's going to help differentiate you from the competition and also help differentiate your offerings. When you look at some of the advanced service models you can start to deliver once you have machine data, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then obviously optimize your resources. So create efficiencies and productivity in a way that you haven't been able to do before, because when the machine starts to tell you what's wrong with it, you're acting on a much higher level of data coming into the system. You can start to even create better reporting because that machine data comes in standardized, and so starting to really understand what's happening with your equipment, building that into the product feedback loop with engineering and product management as well. And so really looking at how you can optimize your resources across the entire service and product lifecycle. So let's talk a little bit about each of these benefits. When you look at increasing customer satisfaction, what that really means from the standpoint of connected field service is that you're going to be able to deliver more proactive and predictive service by auto-creating and scheduling jobs in a much more intelligent way based on those machine issues, looking at service instructions and 3D models, and also identifying real-time data as it's collected to increase the accuracy of data capture and improving your whole triage process. So one example of this is when you're going to be able to visualize the real-time or historical machine data in ServiceMax. And this is just a screen capture of what our solution looks like that we'll go into a little bit more detail with you later. So you can see here a service alert was created right from the machine having a potential issue, whether it was something like a vibration error or any other criteria that you set up in the ThingWorx platform. And then you're able to start to look at that machine data right in the ServiceMax interface. So as a service leader or as a service technician, you're going to be able to look in ServiceMax and start to get a handle on what's going on with that particular issue. When we talk about optimizing field service resources, we're going to be able to really make technicians even more efficient than ever before. So with field service automation, when we introduced mobile and online technology to tech, it was really, again, a major shift in how they did business. They moved from clipboards to mobile. Well, now, if you start to provide machine data alongside of that mobile view of information, imagine how much faster they're going to be able to resolve the issue when they know exactly what was wrong with the machine before they even show up on site. They're going to be able to quickly narrow down the problem with more automated connected diagnostic information and provide access to the right repair information right there in the technician's iPad or Android app right for their easy use. And then the other thing you're going to be able to do is provide remote access to connected devices. So whether you're updating firmware remotely or even a mass update of all of your equipment if you know of a particular failure that you need to address, think about the efficiencies and how you're going to be able to maximize your resources with all of the smart machine data. And here's a quick view of what remote service looks like. And so you can see here the left-hand screen is the ServiceMax interface, and on the right-hand side we see ThingWorx Converge. And right within the interface here, when you're managing your installed products, you can look at things like remote access for a remote tech right into the ServiceMax, from the ServiceMax application into ThingWorx Converge to do things like file transfers or even manage the software remotely, all to avoid having to go out on site and be able to really delight the customer by providing service from a remote standpoint so that they can hopefully address the issue before the customer even knows anything was wrong. In addition, when you look at ServiceMax on the iPad, we've introduced a new app that we're calling Product IQ. It's a feature of connected field service, and it really provides a digital window into your connected products. So you can see here on the left-hand side that you're going to be able to look at a true hierarchy of all of your of an installed product and its configuration. So all of the child assets underneath that main parent asset, where they exist on site, so the technician can know in advance where they're going, and they can easily update the components, decommission a machine, and now they can also start to look at that smart data right in a mobile view connected to that particular piece of equipment, all working fully offline. So as your technician has much more in-depth data on the devices and equipment that they're repairing or maintaining, they're going to be able to really drive improvements in mean time to repair. And with this application, they can also capture competitor information and decide if they want to try to service other equipment that might be on site. Great especially if you have a location-based service model where the tech can go out and really identify other machines that might be able to be serviced. And so again, Product IQ is part of our connected field service solution. One of the other benefits that you're going to be able to see is differentiating your service offerings. And so looking at your product service system, which we'll talk a little bit about later today, and kind of where your business falls on that continuum. Are you operating in a way of you're just selling products? I would assume that most of you who are on the call today have some sort of service business, and so kind of where are you on that continuum? And what value-added services could you add now that you've started to explore IoT? So if you have a certain level of information and data coming from your machines, that reduces your risk for delivering things like outcome-based service models that are based on the level of performance that you're delivering to a customer. How can you maximize your profits based on those new service models? And ultimately, how is that going to give you a leg up with the competition and change the way you're doing business? And the typical example, or one of the classic examples, I should say, of this is Rolls-Royce and their power by the hour model for their airplane engines. And I was actually just at a course in Cranfield University in the UK, which is one of the leading universities that talks about manufacturing and servitization. And someone from Rolls-Royce came in and talked about how now everybody is using their business model, but back in the day it actually allowed them to completely change the game and drive huge amounts of revenue improvements for their organization by shifting to a service strategy. Some other examples here of how you're going to be able to drive improvements in things like first-time fix and really drive that value add in outcome-based models is through automated diagnostics and repair procedures. So using connected device data and delivering the solution to the technician in the field, making sure that if you've delivered a certain level of service expectation to the customer, that they're going to be able to deliver on that because they have all of the information they need to make sure that the equipment does not fail and maintain it properly. And then also as we start to look at working with ThingWorx and PTC, we can really look at the core ServiceMax application, which I talked a little bit about earlier as being those 4 Ps and kind of how you manage your field service organization today. And with ThingWorx and PTC's offerings, we're able to really extend that with some deep service knowledge and diagnostics, parts information, parts planning, So all of the kind of the details that you may need in order to really deliver a complete field service offering, and as it becomes connected into the Internet of Things, starting to also look at predictive applications as our vision for the roadmap of connected field service as well. And PTC has some really exciting offerings on the horizon that we're looking to integrate with ServiceMax. So there's a lot more to come with our vision for extended and connected field service, and so we hope you'll kind of keep abreast of those changes as they happen. One thing that I wanted to touch on quickly is this idea of connected devices as a path to profitability. And so I think on the stat slide that I shared earlier, we had about 15% of field service organizations saying that they have an IoT strategy today. Well, if you're not quite ready for embedding sensors in your equipment, kind of no matter where you are and what the reason, you can still start out in stage one, as we call it, by looking at your installed base and improving your visibility into your installed base with Product IQ, as I showed earlier on. So really getting a better understanding of where your equipment is, keeping track of any changes to it and where it's located on site, and really cleaning up your kind of data, so to speak, so that as you get ready to embed sensors in your equipment, you're starting from a really good level of quality with how you're tracking your install base today and servicing that equipment. Then as you move up this path to profitability, you start to embed sensors in those machines and start to realize connected field service as we just talked about it. And then in stage 3, you start to have enough data on hand that you can think about, maybe there are new service offerings that I could deliver here. Maybe I could offer my customers a way to actually buy a service contract that has a certain level of performance or limited downtime as part of the agreement. And I can deliver on that because I have much better data coming from my machines, and I can mitigate my risk as opposed as to how I deliver those types of outcome-based service. So really focusing on the title of today's webinar, we really wanted to talk a little bit about how all of this these elements with connected field service that we talked about are going to help you really differentiate your business and win against the competition. So I want to give you 5 ways that you can think about, and then I'm going to share a few examples of how our customers have already started to do this. So the first is really address customer issues before they know anything is wrong. And as I mentioned before, this whole concept of really learning a machine is sick from the machine before the customer has to pick up the phone and tell you about it is going to instill a certain sense of brand loyalty into your customer base that you honestly just can't even pay for yourself, right? So I mean, if you think about it, it's such a high value for customers to know in advance that you're going to cover their issues and they don't have to worry about their machines going down. So that in and of itself, with driving that amount of customer loyalty, is going to help you differentiate your business. And then as you start to arm your technicians for faster and smarter repairs with the connected diagnostic and repair information that I showed you before, that's, again, going to give you a great way to differentiate against the competition, because the technician is going to show up and be the most informed engineer that customer has ever interfaced with. So let's say the engineer does need to go out and perform maintenance or even repair a machine, they're going to come out with the exact information they need to fix it the first time, again, setting you apart from the competition. And again, as you start to think about implementing some of these things, promote this to your customers. Use marketing and communication as an engine to differentiate yourself in the market, and explain how your service organization is smarter and ahead of any of your other competitors in the market. Improving asset uptime and performance is another element that I'd love to talk about. So just really focusing on how, again, once you have that machine data, you're going to be able to drive down any downtime of your equipment, really focus on mining that rich performance and data history that you're getting from your machines. And then also focusing on selling proactively based on product data and history. So really using that information that you're mining from the machines to sell them new service offerings, identify if there's preventive maintenance plans that they may want to get on based on information you now know about their equipment. And then, again, moving towards data-driven preventive maintenance and taking machines offline only when it's convenient. So McKinley is a great example of this, and we'll talk a little bit about them first. So McKinley Equipment is one of our great customers. They provide, elevator lifts, docks, and other great equipment for their customers. They're not actually the manufacturer. They provide distributor services on these equipment, And basically for their B2B customers, they're going to be able to improve asset uptime, improve performance, manage their customer assets for them, and drive new revenue opportunities. These are some of the things that they're really getting excited about as they start to leverage connected field service. For their B2C customers, looking at establishing safety monitoring and arming technicians for faster repairs. And so when Kevin Russin, who's the CFO of McKinley, who's someone who speaks on behalf of ServiceMax on occasion, talks a little bit about what they're doing with connected field service, one of the things that excites him most is that he's going to be able to plan when he's doing service for his customers much more effectively and work around their schedules so that they're really providing the most delightful offering of service that they can provide to their customers. The next customer I'll talk a little bit about is Elekta. And Elekta is another great customer. They're a medical device company that provides clinical solutions and services for cancer care and the management of brain disorders in over 80 countries and in 6,000 hospitals globally. And ServiceMax and PTC have been working with Elekta for a little bit of time to really consolidate over 40 sources of electronic and paper resources into one service management system to really help make all service knowledge for any Elekta product easily accessible and shareable. And they also have been leveraging PTC's IoT solutions for quite a bit in order to really deliver more proactive service and also deliver remote service as well. And so you can see here, one of the things they've been able to do with this solution is have 20% of service requests resolved remotely without the need for an on-site visit. And they've also increased system uptime and patient throughput by really connecting their devices. And Daniel Kingham, who's the program director over at Elekta, says that asset uptime is really crucial in their line of work since it's obviously dealing with people with serious illness. And the ability to create real-time reports straight from the machine and deliver them to their techs is extremely powerful. And again, he cites that this feature alone is going to differentiate them from their competitors. And that's what we're starting to hear is that for customers who are really trialing and becoming early adopters of this technology, they're seeing that it's opening the door to create new business offerings and really differentiate their company in ways that they hadn't been able to do before through service. The last company I'll talk about is Enphase Energy. They're a leading provider of solar microinverter systems. They are another great ServiceMax customer that's been leveraging IoT for a while. They're not specifically using our connected field service solution yet, but with their IoT solution, they've really been able to drive proactive, data-driven operations and maintenance capabilities that have ensured a high level of service for their customers and something that they're really proud of and that they talk a lot about in a video that we can definitely provide as a follow-up to this great webinar. But they've been able to really move from reactive to proactive service successfully, and it's had a dramatic impact on their business as well. So in the last section here, I want to talk a little bit about product service systems and how you can use service to differentiate your business. So I like this chart as a way to kind of talk about service continuum and how you think about your business model. So as you look to leverage service to transform your organization and differentiate yourself, just think about where you are on this kind of service value continuum. Are you kind of towards the left-hand side where you're really still working with products and warranties and maybe service parts and edging into the break-fix model? Or have you already started to introduce advanced service contracts, things like SLAs or even usage-based service contracts? The far right-hand side of the continuum is really where IoT starts to open the door to create new business offerings for your company. So outcome-based service really talks about this concept of product as a service. And so instead of selling the product itself, again, you're selling this outcome or performance of your particular product. And so really focusing on the service agreement as a way to differentiate your organization. So some examples here, Sungevity selling solar power, not solar panels. Rolls-Royce, the typical example of them selling flight hours instead of jet engines, and so on and so forth. So really focusing on the outcome or the level of performance that you're delivering. And IDC says that by 2018, 40% of the top 100 manufacturers and 20% of the top 100 process manufacturers will provide these product as a service platforms. So starting to think about, as you mine this rich IoT data from your equipment, what that means for your ability to deliver on new promises and levels of performance to your customers, and how you can build those into service agreements. There's a lot of exciting research on this that's coming out as well, so kind of keep your eye on the industry associations. But this is an emerging trend, something that is not exactly new. I think a lot of businesses have experimented with this in the past, but I think as IoT becomes more prevalent in manufacturers' operations, the risk of offering service agreements like this goes down. And so there's the possibility, as many of you are still in the early stages of figuring out how you're going to adopt IoT, to really build this into your strategic business plan as a possibility. So with that, I am going to hand it over to my colleague, Thurman Keene, who is going to walk you through a demonstration of the connected field service solution that we talked about earlier. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and make Thurman the presenter.
Okay, can you hear me, Melissa?
I can. Thanks so much, Thurman.
Great, great, and thanks again, everyone, for attending today. And what I'm going to do is focus in on specifically the application, and I'm going to show you the solution as it looks in our winter release that obviously came out at the end of December. Again, this release is a combination of really two products. One is the ServiceMax solution, but the other is the PTC IoT platform called ThingWorks. Our two companies came together to formulate this product. As a lot of you guys know on the call, this partnership formulated about 6 to 7 months ago. And within that time frame, not only have we been able to build a prototype for the vision that we want to bring to our customers around connected field service, but we've also been able to release a product in that short amount of time. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So as we tap through the presentation, you guys have seen this slide earlier, but I wanted to bring it up one more time because this really follows the kind of the vision and the product flow in which the solution has been developed. So as you guys know, probably attending a lot of our conferences together, PTC has been front and center in a lot of those keynote presentations. And a part of that keynote presentation is really where we see the market going, as Melissa talked about, with being more proactive and driving service as the product, if you will. But in order to do that, you really have to have an IoT strategy behind it, because you really have to have the type of data from the machine real time that you need to run those analytics to ensure that you have the right uptimes so that you can predict when the equipment's going to ultimately need service. In order to define that solution, we started out with this simplified architecture. And this architecture really allowed us to validate what we're doing from a market perspective, but it also allowed our product development team to at a high level, understand what we're trying to accomplish in a very short period of time. So as I go through this flow, you'll notice we've kind of encompassed a few things. And the first two components here, where we talk about machine issue and problem alert, this usually comes out of your machine-to-machine connection. So when we talk about this, we're talking about the ThingWorks IoT platform, the ability to connect your machines into an IoT cloud, which is ThingWorks, gather all of that machine data, and then turn it into something that's actionable. And when we talk about actionable data, machine gathers rows and rows, thousands of rows of data, thousands of volumes of data. Usually only a subset of that data means something for your service organization. And what that subset means can be dependent on the type of equipment that's driving that machine data. You might monitor machine data so that you can run analytics against it. You might pull specific machine data because it's now actionable and it requires service. There's a lot of reasons why your service organization gathers that data. The key is that machine data is probably being collected for not only service, it could be being collected for a lot of different parts of your business, whether that's R&D, whether that's your manufacturing, whether that's a lot of different business lines within your organization. But a subset of that data is specific to field service. With ThingWorks, you now have the ability to not only gather all that data, but then actually monitor a subset of that data that then would potentially be fed into ServiceMax to make it actionable. That's what we're going to focus in on today and what we're going to show you. So we really can't show you an integration, right? An integration is connecting these two systems together, which is a part of that release that came out in December. But with that integration, the key thing I think just to note is that it's completely transparent to the user from the standpoint of being able to access one solution and have access to not only ServiceMax, but all the things related within ThingWorx or the machine data itself. It's single sign-on, so you don't have to go and toggle between two different systems. All you have to do is have your username and password for ServiceMax, and you'll have access to all the machine data from a security standpoint. But once that information gets into ServiceMax, that's what we're going to show you. That's what I'm going to jump into from the application standpoint. And I'm going to be able to show you some type of service event that requires action. And that action could be remote support, or it could be rolling a truck and sending an engineer on site. We're going to talk about both of those components. I'm not really going to show you the things downstream here for today's demonstration. You guys are being existing customers. I know we have a few prospects on the call too. Obviously, we're an end-to-end field service solution and have the abilities to do things like dispatch management as well as kind of mobility with our iPad to do technician debrief and closeouts. What we want to focus in on is the information that's going to be packaged up and sent into ServiceMax from the machine data or the machine learning capabilities, and then accessible throughout the entire service chain. So with that being said, I'm going to jump over and start really at this middle layer here of when that alert happens in ThingWorx or your machine data, and it's sent into ServiceMax to take action, and what that looks like within the application itself. So I'll toggle over into the ServiceMax demo environment, and as you can see here, again, this is probably looks very familiar to everyone on the call. For those of you that are new, we're 100% native to the Force.com platform, so the look and feel is pretty straightforward. But as you look within the application, there's some new things here just to quickly take a look at, right? I have a dashboard that's on screen that's called Connected Services Work Orders. As everyone on the call is familiar with ServiceMax and reactive service, really a lot of you guys started using our application because you wanted to be able to monitor service events that come in from a reactive perspective. And what's reactive? It's when the customer calls in or instigates service. They find out that they have a problem and they call and tell you that we've got a problem. That's very much a reactive service model. And we do that great today, right? That's how our application handles service today. And there's a lot of different kind of modalities in which a customer can instigate service. There's a lot of different channels in which they can say, hey, I've got a problem, and raise their hand and say, hey, ServiceMax needs to, the solution needs to be engaged to solve the problem. But now with IoT and ThingWorx, we have a new device channel, and that is directly from the machine, right? And now with this device channel, we can create a whole new subset of dashboards and analytics based upon all that machine data that's coming in. So with this connected services work orders, this might be a dashboard of all the work orders that were automatically created from the machine itself. It wasn't reactive. The customer might not even know yet that this work order was created because the machine self-diagnosed that it has a problem and that we need to create a work order to determine how we're going to fix it, right? We also have other ways to do it. If I click on my work order view, you notice that we can always set up these different views. One of the views is that same connected services work orders. If I'm monitoring my work order queue as a service engineer or a tier 2 help desk, I might be responsible for this queue that shows me all the work orders that are being auto-created from the machine itself, so that I'm being proactive in ensuring that these work orders are being addressed, and I can follow up with the customer to ensure that maybe before the machine actually goes down, I can solve this problem remotely or get an engineer on site and fix it before we actually lose the uptimes that we're getting with this piece of equipment. So let me drill into that work order. So if I'm that tier 2 help desk engineer, the first thing I want to do when I see this work order come in is I want to drill in and look at its properties. Look at all the things that are coming in, and the machine has told me of why this work order was created. So on this work order, if I scroll down, the first thing that you see is an equipment alert snapshot. Now, what's that mean? Well, because we're monitoring different type of sensors on this piece of equipment, we set up a threshold within ThingWorx or our machine data and said, hey, we're monitoring vibration, and we want to set up thresholds that say if these thresholds are exceeded, action needs to happen. And you can define what that action is. And in this particular example, we've taken a snapshot automatically and said, hey, this work order was created was because the VED vibration on this MRI machine exceeded the threshold or its acceptable tolerance. And if it exceeds that acceptable tolerance, something needs to be done. We need a work order created, and we need an engineer to start to look at this and potentially fix the problem before it becomes critical or down. And that's what this snapshot's showing us. It's showing us the specific point in time in which this threshold was exceeded. So again, this is really important data for our engineer to ensure how and determine how they can fix this problem. If I scroll down, as Melissa mentioned, the other things that we can do is gather the correct pieces of data to help solve the problem. As all of you guys know on the call, managing service organizations, engineers and customers tell us what the problems are. The problem could be the same across multiple service events, but how engineers and customers document those problems can be vastly different. That problem solved when the machine is telling us what the problem is. The consistency in data of how the machine tells us what the problem is the same across all of those work orders. The value of our data goes up exponentially because it's consistent across all of those service events. And this is where you're going to see that under this equipment diagnostic. All of this information that we gather is based upon the machine telling us what those problems were. The other thing you notice here is we can also gather things like failure codes right from the machine. It's telling us what those problems are. When it tells us what those problems are, again, the data that we can not only use for service, but the data that we can feed into other arms or divisions of our organization that influence our service organization, like manufacturing, like R&D. Now when we can feed them consistent data, we're bettering other divisions within our organization just by being able to learn from the machine itself. The other thing you notice here on this data is the service session ID. Again, as you guys know, ServiceMax does some things around knowledge to help engineers drive up, their fixed rates, their mean time to repair, reduce truck rolls, all those good value adds. But what we don't have is a pure knowledge management tool. And one of the key areas of our partnership with PTC is they actually have a knowledge management solution, and this knowledge management solution was a part of our integration strategy with this solution. And the best way to show it is by showing how this service session ID was attached based upon all of this machine data. So we know it was a vibration alert, we know that it exceeded or was above a tolerance level, and the property was vibration. Well, because it gathered those three data points, it was able to find a knowledge-based article, right, and linked it to that tip. And because it linked it, we have this button on this work order that says, let me drill into PTC's knowledge management solution and see if it's able to find the right knowledge tip so that we can figure out what our next step is. You notice just by clicking on our service flow button, it takes us into PTC's knowledge management solution and found the right tip based upon those properties that the machine told us. And it says, hey, there's actually a foreign object causing the table vibration, and here's the steps in order that you have to take to solve the problem. And again, this is just an example, but this gives you an idea where we're going with this, connected field service solution. If I close out of this and I kind of think about it and I take a step back, again, I'm still that service engineer on the phone or looking at this thing remotely, and I see a snapshot of the problem. But there might also be other areas that I'm monitoring on this asset, this MRI machine, that might lead to this vibration. Right? I have all kinds of sensors that I've got plugged into this MRI. Vibration is just one of them. I might want to look at those other sensor readings to see if there's indicators of why this spike actually occurred. If I scroll down, as you guys know, obviously we allow to manage your install base within the solution. So we have an installed product record. We can drill into that installed product record right from the work order. And by drilling into that installed product record, you notice it pulls me into the serialized asset that is connected, that it was related to this particular work order. So the first thing that I notice if I scroll down is that this is a connected asset. It's actually streaming me data. If I want to quickly monitor things like uptimes, those are, as Melissa mentioned, we can track those things now that we're connected into the asset. But what's more important with our integrated solution is the ability to actually now see all of that real-time equipment data right from the installed product record itself. So as I mentioned, the reason why we only saw vibration and the snapshot of vibration is because that's what caused the work order, and that's what we need to see on the work order itself. But now that I'm on the installed product record, I need to see all of the variables, all the sensors that we're measuring. Maybe there was a spike in things like MRI scans that was the cause of the vibration. Maybe there was a blip in temperature. Maybe I have a low helium level that might also cause it to jump off its track, which is why I had the vibration alert. Now that I have visibility real time to all of the sensors and the equipment data that I'm monitoring, this is gold from the standpoint of a service engineer being able to see how he can resolve this problem without potentially rolling a truck, or if I have to go on site, I can see real time how this machine's performing while I'm standing by that MRI machine. I can even go back in history and see how it's performed over the last week, over the last month, to see if there's any key indicators that led to this dead vibration. So with that, the other things that I can do, as Melissa mentioned, is things like remote access, right? If I want to take control of this MRI machine remotely as a part of solving the problem, I can do that. And maybe one of the ways that I can want to do that is by updating the firmware, right? As you guys know, a lot of the equipment that you guys service has software in it. And that software, a lot of time, causes the problems with the equipment itself. It might not be anything mechanical. It might actually be something more digital that needs to be updated. If those situations occur, we don't necessarily need to roll a truck just to go out and update the software. If we can do that remotely, why don't we, right? Drive down some of those operational costs that we might spend now to do something when we can do it remotely. And as Melissa mentioned, we now have the ability to drill right into ThingWorx and the IoT solution and do those firmware updates remotely right from the product or the asset itself, okay? Here's an example of how we could do that. We can also do things like monitor the file transfer history. How often have we updated the software or the firmware on this MRI machine? Those things are all visible to us. Some of the other things that we can do here, just to kind of close out some of that functionality, is a mass software update. Think about things like a field change order. You know, we just went through and resolved this problem for this specific serialized MRI machine, but maybe now that we've solved the problem, we've seen this in 3 or 4 MRI machines around the same product line, and we've identified that it's the firmware. Well, we've got another 200 of these MRI machines sitting out there across, the North America. We need to go ahead and create a change order and update all of those MRI machines before they start to fail in the same way. We can now do a mass software update and update all of those MRI machines before we have to roll 200 trucks to go do it individually, or before the equipment actually breaks and our customer satisfaction goes down. Okay. With that being said, that's it. And I think the important thing to mention as we close out a lot of this functionality, these same views that you're seeing here from the equipment data also is rolled out to our iPad app. One of the caveats to that is obviously you have to be online to see the real-time equipment data. If you wanted to push a snapshot down, obviously you could push that down as an image and be offline. But as it stands today, you can see this from your iPad. You just need to be online when you're viewing the real-time machine data. So if I go back just to kind of close it out here, you saw all 4 of these components at a high level. As Melissa mentioned, you saw the ability to initiate a service request automatically. That work order was auto-created. You've seen those embedded mashups. We've talked about Product IQ, and you saw that in some screenshots that Melissa showed you. And then you saw some of those other 3 options around, kind of knowledge management as well as remote access. With that being said, as Melissa mentioned, we've got a lot of big plans with connected field service. We know this is where the market's headed. We know this is the functionality that your service organizations are looking for. And we really just kind of started in our path towards building a robust connected field service solution. There's a lot of areas that we're going to be developing as a part of that path, and we're going to be doing that in a very short period of time. And I'll pass it back to Melissa.
Thanks so much, Thurman. So I think at this point, we're going to ask anybody who has any questions to type them into the chat or Q&A window, and we'll be happy to answer questions. So, Bhumika, if you want to read off any questions that we've had already, we'll get started with those.
Sure. We've had a couple questions regarding the recording of the presentation. We actually have recorded and we'll be sending out the link to the recording shortly after the close of the webinar. The first question we have is, can you please review the definition of IoT that you are referring to?
Absolutely. So let me just, hold on, we were just pulling up the, I have it right. So in the context of field service and our connected field service product, IoT is set on enabling internet-based technologies that connect, store, analyze, and report machine data to information systems such as ServiceMax. The acronym stands for the Internet of Things, and its simplest definition is a network of devices and people that sends and receives communications for the purpose of health and productivity. So I obviously read that definition because we've been asked that question before, so I wanted to just share that definition with everybody. And as I mentioned earlier, kind of smart connected products is PTC and Harvard's term for the Internet of Things, but in a sense they're synonyms. So, so that hopefully gives some foundation if we didn't go into enough basics around IoT.
Yeah, and I would just add IoT has been around for quite some time. It's just a new acronym. You know, it's machine-to-machine data, if you will. You know, again, think about a machine that's you know, kind of sending in results of how it's performing. A lot of customers and companies, specifically manufacturers, have always been doing that. Companies like Exida have been around for a while that just gather data, and that's what they do, is they collect all that machine information. Really where the change has been and the new definition in terminology is really when you've seen the explosion in a lot of these B2C type of applications, like, you know, wearables around Fitbits and things like that, where not only is the data being gathered, but now it's making it actionable. That's now starting to filter its way into the B2B sector, right? And that's where you're hearing a lot of this new branding around IoT. But the reality is a lot of companies have been collecting machine data for a while. What we want to do is turn that machine data into actionable activities from a field service perspective.
Great. And then I see another question coming through that I think, Thurman, would be a good one for you to answer. It's just, can you give some examples of how you're seeing people get started with IoT and really embedding sensors into their machines?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, again, it really happens in a few different layers. If you're in a position to where you still have and again, this isn't a derogatory term. It's more kind of how the industry looks at equipment. Is it dumb equipment today where it's got no embedded technology to, you know, tell us how it's performing? Or is it smart equipment that already has embedded sensors to report things like temperature or vibration in those examples? If it is dumb equipment, the first thing that you have to do is determine how you want to retrofit that equipment. There's numerous hardware providers that sit out there that can help you create that type of sensor technology. That includes things like gateways. And a gateway is something to transmit that data to you know, an IoT or a ThingWorx platform. There's companies out there that just do that help you, and we have partners within our ecosystem that can help you determine, you know, what's the best hardware based upon your equipment type, and what's the, you know, kind of the best technology to use based upon the environment in which that equipment sits. If you have smart equipment that is already gathering that data, then you don't have to do that step. You don't have to worry about retrofitting your equipment with hardware. You can simply look at ThingWorx as an IoT platform and implement that as a solution so that it knows how to gather that data and where to send that data so that ThingWorx can do the things that we talked about to make the data actionable and then to send it into ServiceMax.
Great. Bhumika, do you want to read through? It looks like we've got some more questions.
Sure. So the next question that we have is, do you have a product for automotive dealership service technicians that are not working remotely?
Absolutely. I mean, you can leverage ServiceMax for your technicians, whether they're remote technicians or not. The traditional use case of ServiceMax is for technicians who are out there in the field servicing things at a location, or, you know, if you're at an automotive dealership, there's no reason why you couldn't look at leveraging ServiceMax for managing that service information.
Yeah, and I would add two things. One, you know, we have a lot of customers that use our solution for pure depot repair, if you will. Yep. So the equipment actually comes back in to a facility, and they do service at that facility. The other thing I would add too is, PTC as an organization with their ThingWorx platform is not only looking at using ThingWorx for, service-based use cases that we talked about, that is kind of, equipment that's owned, that's equipment that they've sold or they service, but they also have a strategy specifically around manufacturing, smart connected manufacturing facilities, if you will. GE is one of their big partners or their customers in which all of the GE manufacturing facilities are looking at ThingWorx to optimize how their four walls of their manufacturing facilities are performing as far as the machines that are actually building the equipment itself.
Great. Melissa and Thurman, if you guys have time for one more question, I'll go ahead and read this one off. For those questions that we did not get to, we'll reach out directly. But the last question that I have is, any challenges around sending this data via the internet, such as a hospital setting? Seems like a unique hardware or software solution would need to be implemented.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to answer that question specifically. I mean, there are security requirements that we have to fall in line with to ensure that all of those kind of laws and regulations are enforced. I will say a lot of the early adopter customers that are using an IoT strategy today come from that particular industry, the medical device industry. Most medical device companies are more on the cutting edge from a technology standpoint, and we've addressed some of those issues. One of the customers that we mentioned was Electa, and they are specifically in that industry, and they've been gathering machine data for years and making that data usable, if you will.
Great. I'm actually just going to read off one more question, and then we'll have to close up. But is there a charge to add ThingWorx to our ServiceMax platform? How can we actually get ThingWorx? Yeah,
it's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. So ThingWorx is a PTC product. It is licensed by PTC. With that being said, they've come out with special price packages if you're looking to use ThingWorx specifically with ServiceMax. So there is a charge. I think the best way to address that is for us to get in contact directly, and we'll connect you with your account manager and discuss what that framework looks like and what the engagement model actually looks like.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And for those of you, again, that we did not get to your question, we'll go ahead and reach out directly and make sure that we get your questions answered. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day. Thanks so much.